Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lawrence Carter Long, the Director of Communications for the Disability Rights, Education, and Defense Fund. Welcome to Let's Talk Recall Q&A on the California recall election. Our panelists today are Dan Okenfuss with the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, Gabe Taylor with Disability Rights California, Goldie House with Disability Action Center, and Russell Rawlings with the California Foundation for Independent Living Center. Our interpreter today is Brandon. Thank you, Brandon. And our captioner is Lisa. We're going to start now with Dan Okenfuss, the Public Policy Manager for the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, who will address the question, what is a recall?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Okenfuss, and I'm the Public Policy Manager at California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. He and him are my pronouns, and happy to be with you today. I have been with CFLC for about 8 months, but I also came from the state capitol, where I worked a number of years for legislators in the Assembly and the Senate. So here I am to tell you about the recall itself. What is a recall? And a recall is in our state constitution. Back in 1911, it was put in place, and simply the power of the voters to remove elected officials before their terms expire. We're one of 19 states in the country where voters can gather signatures to force a recall election that would remove a statewide office holder. Let's just go back to the quick top of the slide here. I'm presenting on the history of the recall election process in California from 1911 to the present. Recall is the power of the voters to remove elected officials before their terms expire. And we are one of 19 states where voters can gather signatures to force a recall that will remove a statewide office holder. You can also use a recall to remove a local office holder as well. But for conversations of today, we're going to focus on statewide. The recall has been in California's constitution and has been a fundamental part of California's governmental system since 1911 with the approval of Article 2 of the state constitution. Next slide, please. Back in the 1910s, California was kind of in the grasp of a lot of corruption by the so-called railroad barons, the Huntingtons, the Crockers, the who else am I trying to figure out? And the Hopkins. They had a very tight grip on the legislature, and there was a progressive era reform that was championed by Governor Hiram Johnson, who said that it's time to have a process that would give the people the power of action by which they may protect themselves against, quote, recalcitrant officials. It was proposed as an amendment to the state constitution that would allow if enough voters would sign on to a petition to start the process to recall a state office holder. It was first used to remove Marshall Black, a state senator representing Santa Clara County back in 1913. Voters sought his removal after Senator Black was indicted for embezzling funds from the Palo Alto Mutual Building and Loan Association, where he was secretary. And the recall has been used by voters to express their dissatisfaction with their elected representatives and even justices of the state Supreme Court. Next slide. Since 1911, there have been 179 recall attempts of state elected officials in California. I want to emphasize attempts because it's very rare that it actually qualifies enough signatures on the ballot. There have been 11 recall efforts collected that have collected enough signatures to qualify for the ballot. And of those, the elected official was recalled in only 6 of those attempts, 6 of those ballots. And we talked about poor Senator Black from Palo Alto. And then we have a number of others. That was 1913. And then 1914, another state senator, 1994, a state assembly member, 1995, and a state assembly member, 2003. Most recent memory was Governor Gray Davis. That was the only time a governor has been successfully recalled, and that was the way that Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected governor. And then there was another state senator recently, Senator Josh Newman from the Orange County area. He was replaced by Ling Chang in that successful recall. So here we are today. We're in the 2021 recall ballot, and the voters of California are faced with two questions. Number one, shall Gavin Newsom be recalled? Parentheses, removed from the office of governor. And on your ballot, you mark either yes or no. Question two, candidates to succeed Gavin Newsom as governor if he is recalled. And then you'll see a list of the approved candidates that follow on your ballot, and the voter is to vote for one only. Next slide, please. Now about the vote, how it works. Every registered voter received a vote by mail ballot in their mailboxes, and it is important that when you're looking at the ballot, you consider both questions. However, your ballot will still be counted if you don't answer question one, meaning that's just the fundamental question: should the sitting governor be recalled? If question one passes with a majority vote voting yes, that's 50% plus one, then the candidate receiving the most votes in question two becomes governor. And I will then continue my presentation later, but I also will make sure we have time for the next presentation, and we'll be fielding questions and answers afterwards. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gabe Taylor, voting rights advocate for Disability Rights California. And I'm going to be going over some of the hows, whens, and wheres regarding possible ways to cast your ballot. So I'll be sharing some information about different voting options that people with disabilities have. So next slide. So for this election, every registered voter that was registered before August 30th of this year should have received by now a vote by mail ballot automatically. They did this as a way to ensure the health and safety of voters who may be immunocompromised or may be a little bit nervous about going into public spaces, because it is still a pretty sensitive issue for a lot of folks. So they just did this as a way to make voting easier and more accessible for all voters. So that is the first option. There is another option that in past elections, in previous elections, has only been reserved for military and overseas voters or voters with disabilities. And that is an option called remote accessible vote by mail. The links that are on this slide are to information through Disability Rights California's website on the remote accessible vote by mail process. But what it involves is being able to get a link emailed to you from your county elections official to your home computer, and then you're able to download onto your home computer a ballot that is fillable from your home computer. So once you make your selections, and then you can, once you're done and you review them, you can print out your ballot and then be able to return it either by mail, or you can return it to your county elections office in person. So these links give you a step-by-step process of what the process looks like, and then gives you a little bit more information on issues relating to the RAVBM option. The other thing to remember and just to keep in mind is that a lot of folks hear that it is you use your computer to do it, so they automatically think that this is voting over the internet, and it is not. You download the ballot and you get that that access to the ballot from an email, and that is the only connection that you have to any kind of internet. So once you click on that link, it creates a separate document that you're then able to fill out on your home computer. So it is not internet voting. And I just want to stress that because a lot of folks hear the fact that you fill out your ballot using your computer, and they assume that it is connected to the internet. So next slide. So in-person voting options. There will be in-person voting available. There won't be as many locations. So if you live in a Voters' Choice Act a county where you have vote centers instead of polling places, those will be available starting 10 days prior to Election Day, so 11 days total. And most county elections have that information in your voter information packet and also included on their website. There will typically be a link that will list the vote center locations. And then polling locations will also be available in non-VCA counties. So you can go, we included a link to be able to find your local polling place through the Secretary of State's website. And then in terms of requesting any type of accommodation for in-person voting, you can contact your local county elections office, or you can get some information by contacting this 1-800 number through the Secretary of State's office. Next slide. So one of the issues that came up as a huge issue for a lot of folks in the 2016 election, and then again in the 2020 election, we did receive some calls from folks that had been unexpectedly hospitalized or at home due to a medical circumstance. So there is a process for being able to request what's called an emergency medical ballot. And this is a way for a voter to get a ballot to them at either a medical center or a hospital. They can have it delivered to them, and then they can fill it out from their hospital room and then be able to return it. It does, in most counties, involve having someone, either a family member or a friend, be able to go and pick up the ballot and the request form, and then be able to deliver it back to the voter in person. There is one county that I know of that San Francisco County does delivery ballot service. So if a voter calls from a hospital or even their own residence and needs an emergency medical ballot delivered to them, they can give them the information, and then they will have somebody hand deliver it in person to them. But that service is not available in most counties. So if this is something that you yourself know someone, or you have a medical circumstance where you need to request an emergency medical ballot, the recommendation I would have is just do it as much in advance as possible. And also, DRC has information. We have a publication on our website that gives a lot of in-depth information and details of the process and how it works. It also includes, we have a copy of what the emergency medical ballot request form looks like. So you can take a look at that. This is the link to that publication. And so it has a lot of good information on the process and how it works. But it is something that is available to voters with disabilities and also voters who are unexpectedly hospitalized for whatever reason. So next slide. So this is a great resource. This link is called the California Ballot Tracker. So it's California Where's My Ballot Tracker. And it allows a voter, if you click on this link, you put in your registered voting information, and it will give you the opportunity to be able to get updates on the status of your ballot and see once it gets mailed, and then once it is received by the county elections office, and then once it officially gets processed, you will get updates on all of those developments. So because a lot of folks are nervous about the reliability of the Postal Service these days, it just provides another reassurance for folks who want to be able to keep track of where their ballot is going and see that their ballot arrives safely and gets counted. So this is a really great resource for voters who are interested in that. So, so next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Russell and Goldie to share some information about ways of connecting and advocating within your community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe. All right, so I'm Russell Rawlings. I am the statewide community organizer at California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. My pronouns are he and him, and I am joined here by
Goldie House. My name is Goldie House. I am from the Disability Action Center in Chico, California. I'm a systems change advocate and a quality control specialist. Thank you for having me. Today, we are talking regarding connecting advocacy about advocacy in the work group as the Do Network advocates to lead California systems change. We are a group of 29 lead team members in 28 ILCs that work together to help create access and relieve barriers with information to help empower the community.
and we meet the first Thursday of the month at 9 to 10 a.m. And to join us, you can join by sending an email to disabilityorganizing@cfilc.org with the subject Voting Access and Advocacy Work Group.
Next slide. The priorities of the Do Network is building relationship with county elections officials, participating in voters accessibility advisory committees, community education and outreach, wanting to create more access and find where the barriers are when it comes to voting. Next slide.
Thank you, Goldie. So coming up, we also have another event on Monday. We will be having a Crypt the Vote California Recall Election Twitter chat. That will be Monday, this coming Monday at 2 p.m. It will approximately last an hour and a half. You can follow us on Twitter at _CFILC and also at Do Network, that's DO Network, org, and follow the Crypt the Vote hashtag. That will be occurring on Monday, and we will be having an in-depth opportunity to talk with the entire internet community about our upcoming recall and get into some hearing about your stories and your experiences as well. All right, thank you very much for having us, and I am going to now turn it back over to Lawrence to get us into the Q&A portion of the presentation.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that everyone can hear me. I wanted to start with a question for Dan. Dan, you gave us a very good historical overview of the history of recalls in California. Why would you say we're having a recall election this year?
Hi there. Yeah, Dan Oakenfuss here. We have a tool here in the Constitution that allows, voters who feel that if the current office holder needs to be removed from office, through the recall process. What we have is in the enshrined in the Constitution, voters need to meet certain qualifications to put a recall on the ballot. It takes a number of signatures, and that is outlined and also in the Constitution. It depends on the number of voters in the previous gubernatorial election. There's a percentage of that that must qualify. And I can only speculate the reasons for why this was put on the ballot and why it was qualified. But if we look at the process 18 years ago, for the last time we recalled a governor, it was because of a variety of reasons with Governor Gray Davis at the time in response to a number of policy issues. So you don't need a specific reason. It's just simply a petition to.
So it's part of the process. So as long
Part
as
of
the
the process.
process is done, then a recall can happen.
Right. It's simply a mechanism for the public to attempt to remove an elected official. And the key is, before their term is up, the current governor in California, his term does not end until next fall, until end of 2022. So there'll be a general election for the governor in 2022. Then that also is a good point of clarification. Should the sitting governor be recalled in this current election that we're going to finalize on Tuesday, then the replacement in question 2 is only serving the remainder of the current term.
Great. That's good to know. Thank you for pointing those things out. I have a question for you, Russell. One, this sort of came up in the chat, so I wanted to ask it first, but then I have a follow-up. Mark Ramazer asks, is Yo Disabled and Proud part of this effort? Young voters have not been returning their ballots at a very high rate.
So actually, the answer to that is yes, absolutely. Yo Disabled and Proud has been very active in a lot of our Do Network activities, but this in particular, they will be keep an eye on their TikTok. There will be a video coming out. I think that many of you will find to be very educational and helpful in a way that some of us that are a little bit maybe no longer youth are not quite as savvy on some of these multimedia platforms. So I'm excited to see the TikTok video there. Please follow Yo Disabled and Proud on TikTok. And also they will be joining us on the Twitter chat on Monday as well. So we have been engaging with them, and actually I think maybe we might have a few attendees today from the Yo Disabled and Proud program. So the answer is yes, absolutely, Mark.
That's great to see the younger folks sort of utilizing the internet in the ways that they're most comfortable, right? That
Absolutely.
really makes it, I think, something that everybody can participate in. My follow-up goes a little broader in terms of communication. How can we as voters and as disabled people improve communication with county elections offices? And why is that necessary or important?
I see Goldie nodding. I'm going to let him maybe also speak up just after me, but it's because of the work that the systems change advocates have started doing, really kind of building that communication channel. There are a couple of mechanisms that really exist. There are, in counties that are Voters' Choice Act counties, there are voter accessibility advisory committees that are wonderful places to come together with the county elections office directly and inform all of their outreach and communication. I highly recommend that you look at your county elections office and inquire about the existence of a voter accessibility advisory committee. There are also language accessibility advisory committees in those counties that provide language access. So for people who might not be English speaking, they have a similar process where the county elections office is working to outreach in communities that are linguistically diverse. So all of that is accomplished through what's known as the Election Administration Plan, or EAP, which is a guide that tells the county how is this election going to run, and they must follow that. So it's a very powerful, unlike a lot of advisory bodies, I feel like the Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee is a particularly powerful one. And I'll let Goldie chime in. I know he's had some experience communicating both with the elections office and with Voter Accessibility Advisory Committees. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Goldie, what would you add? You're muted, by the way. Need to unmute.
May I please rehab the question again?
Oh, yeah.
'Cause I
The
was
question is,
interrupted.
how can we improve communications with county elections offices, and why is that necessary or important?
I believe in my county, I believe that it's important that elections offices get information out sooner than they do. A lot of the individuals don't have access to internet, don't know about voting twice on the recall, for instance, having to check whether you want the recall or not. Then you have 46 names. I'm one of them individuals that didn't know that, because when I got my ballot, it was at the last minute. And I vote by mail. Us as advocates reaching out to our elections offices in each county and knowing and being educated on when elections are, we can ask the elections office if they can pass out information sooner than 2 weeks before an election. We want to be able to get everyone to be able to vote, and the vote by mail, it still leaves people out. But I believe that putting or getting other agencies that do have individuals that vote to, how do I say it, to advocate for us, not just to see if they're voting, but if they have any information, and then direct them if they have specific situations to an area where they can get voting election information for their style of learning. Because I'm appreciative of the fact that when I have vision impaired individuals, I can have them call and request a large pamphlet. We can have them request, but sometimes it's at the last minute, and many of us don't know when these elections are or when they process. So we're starting to create so advocates can really know who are your officials, your federal, your Senate, your Congress in your area, so that we're able to just look over and then say, contact this county official. If you do not get an answer, reach back out to us and we will help you get pushed forward for whatever access that you need, so that we can advocate for you in what you're requesting to be able to vote. Voting is a very important right and privilege that is underlooked and underutilized in a lot of ways. Yes, we vote access by mail. There are a lot of individuals that are homeless, that may not have addresses. How do we get these people's votes counted, even when they're fire victims in our area and they had a home at one time, or they're living with someone? We want to be able to let them be able to get this information sooner than 2 weeks before the vote needs to be cast, or as soon as they find a ballot into their mailbox. We don't see flyers. We don't see information about voting until in our commercials, till late, till last minute. Newspapers, if it affects us directly in our county. But California is a big place, and we need to look at, because we're like a country. We need to inform our individuals, disabled or not, ahead of time. Passing out flyers. You got an election coming up. This is what you should do. Many people did not know that you had to mark 2 things on your ballot, whether you wanted to vote for, whether you wanted to recall the governor, and who did you want to select to replace. I am one of them individuals who was ignorant to that fact until the last minute after I sent my ballot back in. But I did research the individuals' names, a list of 40 something. Most of the individuals don't have the know or wherewithal. They want to vote, but that's a lot of information to gather at the last minute. Some people hold their ballots and want to research before they mail it in, and they end up missing that date. Over.
Great, thank you. I got a question along those lines. There was a question came in also during the chat, and thank you, Goldie, for that. Person's wanting to know, we have to be very careful as nonprofit organizations and to be nonpartisan with the outreach that we do and the education that we do. But a person has asked, how would the recall impact people with disabilities in California? And the larger question seems to me, and this is specifically to Gabe, but anyone who feels inclined, please jump in. What are the best ways for voters to prepare and to get information on candidates and ballot measures before any upcoming election? We only have a few days until this one, but if people haven't voted yet, what are some of the ways that they can get the information that they need in order to make an informed decision? Gabe, would you want to address this, and then anybody else who would want to add?
Sure, yeah, and to Goldie's point, and I'm actually gonna put our hotline number in the chat.
And why
because-
don't you say that out loud, just so.
So it's DRC has a voting hotline, and it is available all year round, 365 days a year, but we particularly promote it during any given election season. So it is 1-888-569-7955. And we provide assistance for voters with disabilities who have all ranges of questions. We work with folks who just want to know where their polling place or nearest vote center is. We then also deal with a slightly more complicated issues like I am hospitalized, I don't know what to do, I want to vote, I don't know how to get a ballot, how do I do that? Or I went to my local polling place and the accessible voting machine was broken. Or I felt discriminated against when I went to go vote in person at my vote center. What do I do? So we work with, we provide this hotline as a service, and we advocate for voters with disabilities throughout the state. And we also work very closely with county election staff. So they're very aware of the hotline, and many of them provide it in their voter information packet that gets sent out to voters ahead of any election. So that is one resource that is really helpful. And so we try to, we're sort of the problem solvers when it comes to calls that we get. And sometimes we have to get creative because sometimes the most obvious solution isn't the best one. And so if you yourself or you know someone who has either questions or a problem casting their ballot or going to vote in person, definitely reach out to us, because those are things we want to know about, so we can then share them with the county and help them improve the services that they provide for voters with disabilities. But a little bit, to get back a little bit to your specific question, Lawrence, the other, there are a number of other resources available. So the League of Women Voters has a fantastic resource that I always promote ahead of any major election. This election is a little bit different, but ahead of most major elections, statewide elections, the League of Women Voters puts out an easy voter guide, and it's available in hard copy, but they also have electronic copies in multiple languages available on their website. And it gives a really good overview of the contests in an upcoming election. And it also gives a very helpful breakdown of any of the ballot measures that may appear in a given election. And it gives sort of a overview of the background of the proposition, how it got started, what the proposition involves. And then it gives voters a very helpful description of, if you vote yes for this proposition, here's what that will do. And then if you choose to vote no, here's what that will mean. And so it gives a very helpful breakdown and makes those propositions a lot easier to understand, because a lot of the advertisements that you see on TV and information that you get on social media is very slanted. And so the League of Women Voters created this publication as a way to kind of take a very neutral stance and just explain to people the bare bones of what these propositions are about, what these ballot measures are about. So that's a really great one. Another one is Voters Edge California. It's a very helpful resource, online resource, where a voter can type in their registered mailing address, and it will call up all of the information relating specifically to an election in their area, whether it's a local election or a statewide election or a national election that may have specific offices being voted on in their particular voting area. And it also has information. It includes candidate statements from different candidates, if those have been submitted and posted. So it's a really great resource for folks wanting to get information locally on how an upcoming election will impact them on a local level. And then Disability Rights California, just to plug our publications, we have a whole page. We talked a little bit about the emergency medical ballot process, and we have a publication on that, but we also have publications on a wide variety of other voting issues. So that is something that is really helpful, because it gives sort of a breakdown of what, if you're a voter who is out of county, but you want to vote in a county election, how do you do that? So it gives you a step-by-step sequence walkthrough of what that looks like. So those are just some, and yeah, I mean, those are some helpful resources, and you can feel free to contact us. You can contact our hotline if you have other questions as well, or voting issues that may come up next Tuesday or ahead of next Tuesday.
Great, thank you, Gabe. And that hotline number again is 888-569-7955, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. And do you have a specific URL or anything that you can maybe share in the chat that people could go to for the web resources that you brought up?
Yeah, I'll include that in the chat as well. So,
okay, thank you. Anybody have any other resources that you'd like to add to the excellent ones Gabe just gave?
I would like individuals to locate their ILCs, independent living centers, in their areas, because many individuals that are disabled may not understand. But if we can let them know to contact or reach out to their local ILCs in their area, they can go on to the CFILC website and type in a zip code or a county name, you will get the ILC in your area, Independent Living Center or Independent Service Center in your area that will help you, walk you through, guide you, and add you with information and expertise.
And Russell, you just put that in the chat, correct? Okay, wonderful. So that's been shared. That link has been shared in the chat. Anybody have anything to add there? Okay, great. Homeless folks have been brought up, and people that have been evacuated because of fires have been brought up, and I wanted to give a little time to that. You know, there's a high population of homeless folks, and the evacuees are facing all kinds of problems here in the state. How do we reach those folks? How do we make sure that they're being counted, given that some folks aren't going to have addresses? Is there anything anybody would care to say or wants to share about replacement ballots and ways that we can ensure that every vote is not only collected, but also counted?
Thanks, Lawrence. I'll start off by saying that I think for a lot of populations, it really comes down to taking advantage of these numbers, these hotlines to share. I think more than ever, it's going to be valuable to contact county elections offices early. It will also be valuable to, again, call the Disability Rights California hotline if you're a voter with a disability and have some access needs. As far as homeless population, I would say that the best thing we as disability rights advocates can do is to build community and to build relationships with the organizations that serve people that are experiencing homelessness or are houseless, because that's where we're going to find those that are at the intersection of homelessness and disability. And a lot of work is being done to do that. I know that a lot of folks in the mental health world can also be sources of communication and collaboration on this work. But Gabe and others, I'd like to hear maybe a little bit more about some tips and strategies, particularly on like when should folks start thinking about getting a medical ballot, and even could a medical ballot theoretically be used for someone who's a fire evacuee who might have a disability?
The one great, I mean, if we can look at any of the positives that have come about as the result of everything going on in this day and age with pandemic and restrictions on where folks can go and what people can do. One of the things that I think has been very helpful is that people are finding different ways to make these services available and to open them up to more voting populations. For example, the remote accessible vote by mail. In past years, like I had mentioned during our discussion, in past years, that had only been available for voters, military and overseas voters, and voters with disabilities. And now it is available for all voters. You just have to contact your county elections office. And so for folks who may be displaced because of fire or out of their county, their regular county area, that may be a possibility to, depending on their circumstances, it may be possible for them to get a ballot delivered to them. But to make sure that you're taking the best steps possible, the recommendation that I would have is just do it as soon as you possibly can. Because one of the hard parts is that, because we have gotten calls from voters during past elections on election day, and because a lot of these counties are sort of, the county election staff is stretched thin as it is. It's very difficult for them at the last minute to be able to provide services effectively to a voter who may be displaced or may be hospitalized in a city that is, 2 hours away from the nearest county elections office. So, my advice again is do what you can as to prepare. And I mean, life happens while you're busy making other plans. But in the instances that you can do what you can to prepare and take those steps to make sure that you're able to have the services available to you. Create a plan and start it ahead of time. Reach out if say you're having surgery and it's 3 weeks before an election. Contact your county elections office if you're really interested and passionate about getting your ballot in. Contact them right away and say, hey, look, I'm going to be admitted into such and such hospital. I'm going to be there for a couple of weeks because I'm having a medical procedure done. I'd like to see how I can vote. And if they have enough time ahead of any election, they more than likely will be able to help you out. So, I mean, that would be my recommendation. I mean, again, you can't plan for everything, but for those things that you do know are coming, and if you are interested in making sure your ballot gets in, take the steps you can to do whatever you can to make that possible.
I
Yeah,
just
it
wanted
may-
to, sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add that I added in the chat, we got some instructions from the Secretary of State's office, Elections Division, a couple weeks ago during all the evacuations from the US 50 Tahoe corridor and up in South Lake Tahoe during that fire, which is still ongoing. But voters who've been evacuated due to wildfires have a couple options. The first option only applied before August 30th if you still needed to get a ballot, mailed to you to a different address. But now we're in the crunch time before Tuesday's election. You can still vote in person and complete a same-day voter registration if you're temporarily located in a different county, wherever you are while you are under evacuation. And then you can get a provisional ballot that you can use the same day as you go at a voting center. And then they would then cross-check that with the address where you're currently a resident.
And Dan, I will also add too, this process is a little bit easier and more straightforward because of the fact that everybody's ballot looks the same for this election because everybody's voting on the exact same thing.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit easier to get through that process and be able to make sure that your ballot does get counted. But that same day conditional voter registration process is available for any election.
Good to know. Thank you. Thank you. I know we're running close to the edge here, so I wanted to give everybody my thank you for your information and your time and attention today and for sharing this information with folks. I also wanted to give you a chance to just let people know one last time how they can contact either you or your organization directly to find out more information. So somebody from CFILC, Dan, you just spoke. So what about Russell? Why don't you give us that information? Thanks.
Great, thanks. I'll give you two email addresses that you can use. First is my personal email is Russell, RUSSELL @CFILC.org. And then if you'd like to contact the Disability Organizing Network, the DO Network directly, you can email us at disabilityorganizing@CFILC.org.
That's great. Thank you. And Goldie, what about the Disability Action Center? How can people get in touch?
Yes. My email is, I put it in the chat. It's TALMADGE@actionctr.org, or you can reach our center directly at actionctr.org.
Thank you very much.
What you want. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And Gabe, how about DRC?
So I just put my email in the chat as well. So it's Gabriel, Gabriel .Taylor, TAYLOR at disabilityrightsca.org. And my direct phone number is 213 again, 8109. So you can contact me directly, or you can contact our voting hotline. And like I said, it's available now ahead of next Tuesday's election, but we provide it as a year-round service. So anytime you have voting questions, you can feel free to reach out to us.
That's great.
Also a good way to keep track of the Do Network and CFILC activities is through social media. This is the best way to know what we're up to. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find both the Disability Organizing Network and California Foundation for Independent Living Centers on all of those platforms.
That's wonderful. Thank you, everybody. This is Lawrence again from the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, who've been assisting with our partners here on this statewide effort. You can reach us. The best place to go and find out information on DREDIS work is dredf.org. Just go to the web at dredf.org. You can also sign up for newsletters and alerts from the organization from the website. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.